So this is student handout 2. Oh, welcome back, Alamas. This is student handout 2 from Angles and Triangles unit. You can check your homework from last night on homework 1. We've already done that, so we're moving on. So angles are formed when two lines intersect. That requires you to write that sentence. Okay, we're going to practice using a protractor real quick. So I'm going to pass these out, so hold up. So looking at your protractor, you will notice probably you have a small hole in the middle there. And then off of that hole you have a straight line drawn. The small hole is for... So that small hole is to line up at where your lines intersect. Your lines are intersecting right here. So you need to line that small hole up in that space. The two lines off of that is to line up with the line behind it. Okay? I don't know what this guy is here. Okay. So I have my protractor lined up. There's two lines. I'm looking for the measure of angle A first. Two lines are forming an angle. This line right here is pointing to 0 and 180. One of your lines will always point to a 0, 180. The other line is pointing up here. Well, so I'm using the left or the right side of my protractor? The left. So that means I'm using the top set of numbers. So that means I'm using this 0 over here. And it's going from 0, and the other line is pointing to where?
130.
We're using the top numbers. So it's pointing to 50. So how large, what is the measure of angle A? 50 degrees. Okay? I could rotate my protractor and line it up for B, or I could have left it where it was and just used the other side of the protractor. I kind of like doing that because rotating it kind of gets on my nerves. So I notice over here, now it's pointing to 180, 0, and then it's pointing again over here. So I need to use the bottom set of numbers this time if I left it right here. And it is going from 0 to where? 130. So angle B measures 130 degrees. Now I would need to rotate it so that one of C's lines points to a 0. So I'm going to tilt it like that. I could turn it all the way around and measure it. I'm just going to tilt it this way. Okay, I see this line is pointing to 180 and 0. The other line is pointing here. So am I using the bottom or top set of numbers? Bottom. It goes from 0 to where?
150. I mean, 150.
50. You can always know if you're correct. Well, to know, well, is that an acute angle or an obtuse? Acute. Well, my number better be less than 90 then. Okay, and your angle D, I need to line up my dot again here, rotate it. A little off. Okay. Here it's pointing to 0 and 180 over here. So I'm using the bottom set of numbers, and it's going from 0 to
130.
It's an obtuse angle, so is it gonna be 50? No. What's it gonna be? 130. We're using the bottom. 130 degrees. And that's generically how protractors get used and work. Okay? The part I want you to take away is, for some reason, in all the LEAP tests, they put a button of where you can use a protractor. I have never known a question to need a protractor for a LEAP test. So that messes you up when they put that on there. Because what you want to do when you see a problem like this, is you're like, oh, I'll just get my protractor and measure it. They're not actually drawing it correctly. So they'll draw it wrong. You'll use a protractor, measure it, and think it's 90 degrees when they didn't draw it to scale. And then you'll work the whole problem wrong. So I would keep that in mind. I have never heard of a question ever needing a protractor for a LEAP test, even though they give you the button. Okay? Huh?
Yeah, there was like a siren.
So, we have a question here. It says, what do you notice about the angle? Well, first, I have a perfect circle drawn now from my protractor. Notice, anytime I have intersecting lines like this, it's going to make a circle. So all my angles is adding up to a circle. How many degrees is a circle? 360. So that answers the question, what do you notice about the sum of all four angles? They add up to 360. All four of these added up gives me 360. Then it says, what do you notice about the angle measures? Look at the four angles we measured. Any notices? What do you notice, Brady?
It goes 50, 130, 50, 130, like in that order.
Pattern? Zyler, what do you see?
So the angles when they're across, they're gonna be like they'll be the same like this.
Okay.
Like that.
He notices like A and C both were 50 degrees. They were the same size. Do they kind of look the same size?
Yes.
Okay. B and D are across from each other. Do they kind of look the same size? Yes. So there's might be a new word for you. A and C are congruent. Congruent means equal. B and D are also congruent. Alright, so now learning our two new definitions. First definition, what were the two from yesterday? Supplementary, which meant 180, and complementary, which meant 90 degrees. Okay. Now we have vertical angles. Vertical angles is a pair of opposite angles formed by intersecting lines.
Can you turn that brightness down?
Okay. Do it again. Vertical angles are across from each other. Zyler pointed out vertical angles a second ago. Who is across from each other?
A
A and B.
A and C are across from each other, and B and D are across from each other. They're vertical angles. I, with my stupid ways, when I was a child, could not remember anything, and I had to come up with ways to remember all these definitions. And I noticed with the V of vertical angles, when you had vertical angles, these are really two V's pointing at each other, right? Those two are vertical angles, and up and down is vertical angles. I kind of thought of them as cute little ducks kissing. Their beaks are touching. So that's how I knew what was vertical angles. Is A and B vertical angles? Is A and B vertical angles? No. They are not. The beaks are across from each other to be vertical angles. A and B are just side by side. Ethan, what? So, coming to our examples, we said A and C are vertical angles. And who else? B and D are vertical angles. Okay. Does A and C, do they look the same size or different?
About the same.
They're the uniqueness about vertical angles. They will always be the same size, so they are always congruent.
Congruent always means equal.
Yep. Our next new definition is adjacent angles. Adjacent angles is two angles that share a common side and a common vertex. This point in the middle is a vertex. I like to think of adjacent angles as just side by side.
Vertex or vertex?
Vertex. Okay, so they're side by side. So who's side by side here? A and B are side by side. C and D are side by side. There are actually some more. A and D are side by side. And B and C are side by side.
Whenever you would write one of the letters, you always have to put that little one. And if we don't,
Yeah.
it means angle.
Okay. Our desks are kind of arranged where we have different vocabulary words going on at a table. We look at this table right here. What relationship or vocabulary word does Aiden and Caleb have?
Vertical angle.
They're vertical angles. They're... Stop. Okay, they're vertical angles. Kinley is vertical angles with who?
Bethany.
Bethany. Okay.
Is she angled with Libby?
No, Libby is not in this group. It's out of the floor. Okay. Aiden and Kinley is what definition?
Adjacent.
They're adjacent, but they're also something else.
Supplementary.
Supplementary, making a straight line. Okay, what about Kinley with Caleb?
Complementary.
Adjacent and
Adjacent and supplementary. There is no 90-degree angles in this section.
If there was, it would only be Libby.
It would be one person. Kinley is a it. Well, but complementary is two angles, so there's not one.
Olivia's the
Okay. All right. So let's take a look at some examples using our vocabulary words.
Other box.
Oh, adjacent angles, most of the time, not all the time, but they are supplementary. So they follow the same rules.
There could be a adjacent complementary. She thinks she said something.
Do I need to close my window? Alright, so number 1. I should look at this and I should see one of these 4 vocabulary words that I learned. What vocabulary word do you see with number 1? Vertical angles. So number 1 are vertical angles. Vertical angles are congruent or the same or equal. So if they say 148 is this angle, then what does x have to be? 148. I love vertical angles. They're simple.
Wait, what?
They're the same. They're congruent.
Always.
Always the same. Okay. What vocabulary word do you see on number 2?
Adjacent.
Adjacent. I also see something else. Supplementary. These 2 angles is forming a straight line, which means those 2 angles is adding up to how much? 180. 35 of it is already being used. So these are adjacent angles. How do I find what x is?
You just
180 minus 35, and I get 145.
When you do the thing where you take the kids away.
We're about to. They didn't ask for an equation, so we were just doing that in our head. Okay, moving on. Now they're asking for equations. Number 3, what vocabulary word do you see?
Obtuse.
It's one of these 4.
Supplementary.
They're making a straight line. You two stop. There's quiet. They said these 2 angles add to 117. I'm pretty sure complementary is up to 90. Supplementary is 180. So it's neither of those. Are they vertical? No. So what are they? They're just adjacent, sitting side by side. They said these 2 angles add to 117. How can I write that equation? Like we did yesterday.
94 plus x equals 117.
94 plus x equals 117. Okay, now I can solve this. Subtract my kids away. I get x equals 117 minus 94 gives me 23. So the value of x is 23. So what is the measure of this angle then? 23 degrees. So then it asks the angle measures. What were the 2 angles that added up to 117? 94 and 23. Okay, number 4, what vocabulary word? Adjacent. This time, they're adding up to 141. I need to write an equation. So it equals 141. What equals 141? What's my equation? 2x plus x equals 141. Here is where starting to write your equations is necessary. This says you have 2 x's. This says you have how many x's? 1. How many total x's are there?
3.
3. 2 x's are here, 1 is there. That gives me a total of 3 x's. I can combine like terms. Now in this case, does my x have any kids to solve? To leave? This one is married now. So this one needs to be divided by 3. 141 divided by 3 is 47 degrees. Okay. Now this is where it's not tricky. You just have to be close, paying attention. The value of x is 47. This angle here says x. So what is that value? 47. This one says 2x. It's 2 sets of the x. So 2 times 47, which would be 94. So what are the 2 angle measures that give me 141? 94 and 47. What, Brady?
So I understand vertical, but adjacent,
They're just side by side, and they're going to tell you what the.
so
They
what's
equal.
side by side?
See how they're sharing this line, and then they're side by side, like the 3 and the x I say are side by side. These 2 are side by side next to each
So
other.
the next one will be
Okay. Number 5. What vocabulary word do you see?
vertical.
Vertical. And vertical angles are the same. They equal each other. So that means there's my equation right there. 3x equals 20. So to find the value of x, I just solve this. Divide by 3. I get x equals 6.6 repeating degrees. So the value of x is 6.6 repeating degrees. But here's where some people might take forever. What is this angle?
20.
And they said they're vertical, so what is this angle?
20.
So what are the 2 angles? 20 and 20.
Oh, that's the year.
It is.
That's crazy.
So crazy.
All right. Hey, I've had people complain that they hear more background noise than me. Yep. Angle relationship allows us to determine any unknown angle measure. All angles around a point or a vertex where all these lines are meeting is the vertex or a point. Well, they said all of these angles around that point make a certain amount of degrees. What kind of degrees is a circle?
360.
360. So what is the sum of all these going to always be? 360 degrees. Okay. These are really fun to me because they're kind of like escape room-ish puzzly things. So I use all 4 of my new vocabulary words to help figure out what everybody is. I know all of these add up to 360, but I know some of them make a straight line. I notice P and M are supplementary, right?
Yes.
But do I know what either of them are?
No.
No. I know M and K are also supplementary, but do I know what either of those are? No. But I do notice across from M and K, there is another line formed using 40, 60, and P. Do you see it?
Yes, ma'am.
So all three of those should add up to what?
180.
180. So I know 40 plus 60 plus P should equal 180. Well, 60 plus 40 is how much? 100. So what does that mean P has to equal? 80. Okay. Well, there's that one. Then there's no special order in finding these. Everybody finds them in a little different order. Some people might notice that this P and M make a straight line, so I could find M. Some people notice P is what relationship with K?
Vertical.
Vertical. So what does K have to equal? 80 as well. So I know K is 80 degrees. Okay. Now I'm looking for another definition. Some people might see M and K are supplementary and do that math. Or some people might see that this 60 and 40 angle is vertical to who? M. Together, they're forming a vertical angle. So what would M have to be? 100.
She's smart.
See how it's kind of fun, puzzly thing?
Oh, yeah.
All right. I don't really like writing the equations. I think we get how the equations are set up. So let's work number 7. What does that box mean?
A right angle.
It's right angle, so what degrees?
90.
I like filling it in just so I can see it. I need to find G and J. So anybody see something that will help me find that? What do you see, Brady?
90 and 32 plus that equals 100 and I think it's like 28.
22. What about it?
That is equal is vertical for J.
So he notices that these two angles together are vertical to J. So 90 plus 32 gives me 122. So J is 122.
Oh, I just marked all that out.
You don't have to write it. Then Caleb has a way.
So, I just thought, oh yeah, 32 and that other little, that blank little,
Yeah.
them together make 90.
So these two have to make 90. So if I was looking for this guy, that would help me. Very good. What do you see? I need G. How can I find G, Emmy?
G in the right angle, if you do 90 minus 32, you can get 58, and then 58 is vertical to G, so you get 58.
Whoa. What, you're doing supplementary like that?
No, I was doing 90 degree complementary. If you do, like,
G is not complementary to it.
Wait.
vertical to the one that isn't there.
Oh, to these two? Okay, so it's vertical to, I don't think it is. It is not. Yeah, the blank, these two are not vertical to G. This, just the blank one? Oh, this is 58, and then so G has to be, I'm with you now, 58. All right, so these two are vertical, so she found the blank one and knew that that had to be 58.
Or you can just see how J is 122,
Yes?
and you would do 180 minus 122.
Because they are supplementary.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no one right way of solving it as long as you figure out the puzzle. So let me close out my video. That's all for this lesson. You have homework 2 that goes along with this that will be checked. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and peace out, llamas.